Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome. My name is Tom Banchoff. I'm Georgetown's Vice President for Global Engagement and also the Director of our Berkley Center for Religion, Peace, and World Affairs. And on behalf of the university, President DeGioia, the Berkley Center, and all the other partners here at Georgetown who facilitated in bringing this conference together, I'm delighted to welcome you to 2 days of reflection on the critical topic, love and forgiveness in governance. I especially want to recognize the Sant'Egidio community and the Fetzer Institute, the main partners on this initiative, for bringing us together to this important gathering here at Georgetown. I particularly want to point out Charlie Gardner of the Washington office of Sant'Egidio. Charlie, stand up. Where are you? Yeah. Charlie, those of us who put together events like this know how much work it takes, and no matter how collaborative it is and how many partners are involved, always seems to be one person who really comes through. And Charlie, thank you for bringing us together. Thank you to Andrea Bartoli and the Sant'Egidio community. Just a couple of words about Sant'Egidio and its strong relationship with Georgetown, which I think is one of the reasons we're gathered here this afternoon. Those of you who know the community know that it is really synonymous with the dynamic force of love and forgiveness and peace in world affairs. And we were fortunate enough some 8 years ago now, it's been 8 years, to host the first Prayer for Peace meeting held in the United States here on campus. And there's really a strong connection between Sant'Egidio's philosophy and roots and those of Georgetown. Georgetown, as you know, is the oldest Catholic university in the United States. We have a Jesuit identity and mission very much dedicated not only to excellence in research and teaching, but also to service to the wider world, to issues of justice, peace, love, and forgiveness. And we're delighted to be here for this time of reflection with you in partnership with Sant'Egidio, the Fetzer Institute, and so many other organizations represented today and tomorrow. Let me just say a couple of words about the topic from the point of view of a political scientist. And my colleague and friend Dan Philpott from Notre Dame hasn't arrived yet, I don't think, but he'll provide a political science perspective tomorrow in the panels. It's kind of a puzzle. I would posit the hypothesis that love and forgiveness really are powerful forces in governance and world affairs, but they're not very visible to us. And it's not simply because we tend, in our own thinking in the media, to focus more on hatred and violence. I think it's because there's a lack of understanding. There's been a lack of effort on the part of political science and other disciplines at the university, across the humanities, to really take on this issue as a factor, as something that helps us explain outcomes and something that can help drive progress toward a better world. As a political scientist, already in graduate school, you're taught, and this is still the case, to think about politics in terms of interests and institutions maybe even ideas, but the kinds of ideas you're looking at tend to be passions, interests of various kinds. There's not a lot of space for love and forgiveness, and part of it is the fact that those are difficult topics, hard to grasp, hard to measure. Part of it is, and I think this hints at the sort of philosophical and theological grounding of why we're here. Love and forgiveness are mysterious categories that are hard to factor into, to use that political science terminology, explanations of world events, even though we intuit that they play a critical role as transformative forces, not just at the level of communities, but maybe especially at the level of individuals. So I look forward to the conference as a whole, continuing the dialogue this evening and tomorrow. We'll have a chance to look at specific cases, right? That's the best way to tease out the power of love and forgiveness in governance, to look at specific cases across religious traditions, across world regions, across topic areas. So we've got a wonderful conference ahead of us. I want to thank you all for being here, especially thank the presenters, scholars, activists, all of you here. I especially look forward to hearing from Paul Bhatti, a real leader in this field. And now it's my pleasure to turn things over to our partner, Kurian Thomas, of the Fetzer Institute.
Thank you, Tom. Good afternoon and welcome to the Symposium on Love and Forgiveness in Governance. My name is Kurian Thomas. I'm a program officer at Fetzer Institute. I'm very proud about this collaboration with Community of Center GDO and the Berkley Center. I'm really excited to see all of you here. And it's also we built a community at Fetzer through this work, and that community got expanded over the time with all the partners and collaborators here. So it's an opportunity to come together and learn from each other as well as to celebrate together. So very happy that you're all here. Let me also, please allow me to welcome you all on behalf of Carolyn Brown, our trustee here, who is present here. And also on behalf of my colleagues, Deborah Higgins, Director of Programs, and Tina Adams, Vice President of Finance and Administration. I would also like to extend my welcome on behalf of Fetzer trustees and staff and our collaborators. When we talk about, when we look at today's world, what comes to our mind is more around conflict, as Tom was mentioning. When we look at the media, what we see is more about the STs, the worst, the first. When we say about STs, it's around the worst disaster of this time, the worst time in the history, or like, that's where the narrative is taking us. But then when we look at a little more deeply, there is another story which is about the power of love and forgiveness. And that is what we would like to sort of highlight here, and that's the story we would like to learn from different partners and collaborators here. Fear and violence can be seen as a dominant story in our culture. When we look more closely, we recognize another story, the experience of love and forgiveness, deeply rooted in our culture and traditions. This is a story we would like to bring to the light of the day. And this is a new story which our council has actually worked on and actually has been promoting through different channels all throughout this time. But we really need, when we often found the powerful messages of love and forgiveness in the middle of conflict. So we don't need to really look for such stories, not only in countries which are considered to be the safest or economically advanced or considered to be less violent as some of the indices might show us, but we might find such stories in the middle of conflict zones, in the middle of violences. We call within our council such stories of exemplars of love and forgiveness or positive deviants of love and forgiveness. So we'll be hearing from stories from Uganda. We have Angelina Thiam here. We have Stephen and Evelyn. So we'll be hearing stories from extremely difficult situations. We'll be hearing stories from East Asia and Middle East, which may not be considered as the most peaceful when we look at some parts of the world. But we'll be hearing stories from Alvi and Ed and Ibrahim from that part of the world. We'll also be hearing stories not only from today's event, but also stories about what's happened in the past, like the Solidarność movement, the Solidarity movement in Poland. So it's a range of things we are going to gather and learn from here, from different kind of environments, different kind of settings, from today, from the past. So I'm sure it's going to be a great gathering with all of us here, and so much of rich discussion is going to happen. And I'm also looking forward to hear from Paul Barty and other panelists here. So looking forward for all their wisdom here. And when we look at these stories, one thing we need to be clear is that these are not paper arguments. These are stories of real people out there being an exemplar out there. So when I had an opportunity, Dan Philpott is not here, but when I had an opportunity to travel with Dan Philpott to Uganda, it was so touching where people talking about love and forgiveness when they experienced such difficult situations. So even to talk about the word forgiveness when they were in the middle of that situation, that really meant so much. It was not just talking about, it's very different from somebody, cutting me, on the street and sort of, behaving me a bit rudely. But somebody is challenging my own identity. Somebody is challenging my own way of being in that society. I mean, that being challenged, and in that context, they've been talking about forgiveness. So we have some very, very powerful messages and stories to be captured here. One another aspect I would like to highlight here is when we talk about these stories, we are not only talking about the leaders like Gandhi or Mandela or Wangari Maathai or Martin Luther King. We are talking about leaders who are less known leaders, that's what we call them. But again, their stories made a huge influence in their communities during their lifetime, even beyond. So again, I want to emphasize it's going to be a mix of experience we are going to get from this symposium. And many of you in this room inspire me every day with your work, with your integrity, and with the commitment you have to love and forgiveness. So I'm excited about this, and I welcome you all again. And now I'll hand over to Thais Coral, who is a member of FETSR Advisory Council on Governing Professions. She's a social entrepreneur, and she founded 3 organizations, and she's from Brazil. Yesterday I learned that Thais speaks 5 languages. She's lived in different parts of the world. And she's part of forming few international organizations like World Future Council. So I welcome Thais to share your perspectives. Thank you.
Thanks, Kurian, and thanks everybody. Thanks, Andrea, the FETSR Institute, the Sant'Egidio community, and Georgetown University. It's a big honor for me to be here, and especially to kind of share with you the assignment that Andrea gave me, that was to make a bridge between 2011, when we all started in this experiment of the FETSR Foundation, which were the advisory councils, and now. No? And I want to start that journey by my own experience. Now, the first time I went to the FETSR Institute and in Kalamazoo, and I have had many friends that had previous experience with the FETSR Institute, and I myself in 2001 went to a retreat that was supported by the FETSR Institute, but it was my first time at that amazing place, and the retreat, the seasons that everybody said, you should go there and see. But my first connection to those 2 words of love and forgiveness, no, which seems a little mellow, no, if you just hear them outside of a context. But it was this sentence of John Fetzer that calls love as the core energy. And I think this is, that word, the energy, is very important, because this is what is behind, I think, the whole power of that perspective, which is different from how in our societies we embrace love, because we talk more love about an emotion. Love is related to I love you or to a romantic scene, but love as an energy is something that is different, because love is our power to really be in the world, do positive, to connect, to be inspired. Love in that sense, as he says, that rules everything, and it's really true. And love is the one ingredient that holds us together. And it's true, because love, at the end, is what holds everything that is alive together. And that idea that forgiveness is the way in which you release these parts, our edges of things that sometimes we really even know. But forgiveness is what releases that energy. And it was so interesting for me the first time I was there, that I entered that room where there is a story of John Fetzer. No? And for me it was very touching to see that in 1990, my life for many years, for 20 years, I work with radio, no? And I know the power of radio. Radio is that energy that connects us through listening, and listening, it's interesting, because in all the Eastern, many Eastern traditions, the ear is connected in the Chinese medicine. The ear is more connected to the heart. So sometimes you look and it's a different kind of connection you have. The seeing is more this part, but the ear goes to the heart. And so it's very interesting that that he made the fortune and the basis of what connects all of us through energy, because through the waves of radio, no? And I was very touched by that, because that happens in 1920, while everybody else, the Rockefeller, the Fords, were like digging steel or digging oil, and Mr. Fetzer was already kind of connected to the waves and be inspired by that energy, no? So that was my first experience, and I felt so, even if it sounds to me a little difficult, our group, we were very different and all these different perspectives, but being there with John Fetzer and the radio and the energy, love as an energy, I said, that's it. And that was, I mean, my first experience there, no? So the second, in the second moment, I think it was very interesting how the Fetzer Institute has actually backed us through that journey, no? And I really want to acknowledge this, because I think it was a huge commitment, and from the board, from the staff, from from all the people that helped that, you know, kind of getting these councils with very different people, because all of them were like universes, no, like NGOs, business, sciences, engineers, labor, trade, and crafts. I remember that I have a friend in labor, trade, and crafts. She said, "This is crazy, you know, because we are so different from each other." And then world of religions, education, social scientists, information and communication, design, natural science, humanities, law, governing professions, us, health and art. So I think that first year was at the time for us, through these meetings we had, you know, to kind of get to know each other and sense how we felt inside our group, you know, and our perceptions of love and forgiveness, on how we could manifest it and how we could get together for a CISI, you know. And a CISI, which happened 1 year later, no, and with an amazing, an incredible undertaking. You know, I've been to many meetings, but for me, it was like a benchmark. And because of the love it was around, because it was not only the Fetzer, but the whole city. And I lived in Italy, and I know also what does it mean. The whole city was involved, you know, all these congregations that live in Assisi, everybody was involved, and all the buildings, you know, these buildings that we know that in Italy are closed with 7 keys. It's almost impossible to get in. We could go to all of them, all these events happening. So I think it was an amazing experience that we all had the privilege to participate, you know, and to kind of be together with all these councils that somehow tried the program where the councils manifest in how in their own experience they absorbed and they could manifest love and forgiveness. And I think it was really inspired, and indeed, it was a global pilgrimage, you know, that I am sure that has influenced a lot of transformation that probably we don't even know, no? So we should be proud of it, you know, we all should be proud, because it was incredible, no? And then coming from there, I think we had in our council, we had our projects, because that was the idea, no, that all these initiatives would somehow manifest love and forgiveness, and I mean the power of that energy. It's I think we should call it an energy, because if we say that is an energy, because if you talk about an energy, we all want to have energy. We all want to have our energy available for us for something positive, because our life is short. And so that energy is the energy of love, because it's the energy of connection. Alone, we can't do anything. We are not alone beings. Nobody is a lone being. The animals are not. Anything is. No, the plants, anything that is alive is part of a web, as we are. No. And so I think it's interesting, because this morning we were listening from. I think that any organization today which is healthy is in a transition. No? Nobody can say that we know it all, because we are in such a change, and so accelerated. So I think it's interesting, I was thinking how to kind of, I think what Fetzer has done with this experiment, when I was there in Assisi, I said, no, this is the new Renaissance, all these different professions somehow manifesting something that is transcendent, like it was in the Renaissance with art, with the science, with those emerging fields. But I think it's, I asked to kind of share with you this design, which is not, which shows a little bit, in the post-conventional leadership, how it all seems a little bit chaotic, but I mean, it's not chaotic. It's the way it's dynamic. It's in a way. In synchronicity, how things somehow are aligning according to the energy that makes them possible to align. I think so. This is probably the post-conventional leadership across sectors, and how the sectors are aligning, are finding things in common, are finding how to collaborate and kind of create, co-create possibilities, dialogue with multiple stakeholders, cross-sector partnership, collaboration, transparent communications, deep sense of interconnects, collaborative network, all these things like qualities that we hear separate, but are all part of the same field, And through this vision of love and forgiveness and love as an energy, and forgiveness as something that will release that energy, we can kind of, we are also creating this generative force field, which is this other chart, that adapted from Di Balliel. Which says that you start by an inspiration, you go from an intention, and that intention creates the basis for sharing our humanity, for having an alliance with life and the collective memory, which is very important, our collective, where we came from, which is something that really connects us. That's why we tend to align with people that have the same story that we have. And then the synergy with the collective intelligence, the creation of potential as generating a force field, which I think is what we envision when we talk about love and forgiveness. And to kind of to end and to conclude this presentation, which this actually is my remarks, I thought it would be interesting, and probably many of you know about, but it was always as this idea of creating a public narrative, based on that framework that of the three questions, the call for leadership and public narrative, and a narrative that can connect people of the three levels, the me, the us, where I came from, or who I am, the us, and what we do together now, And I took, I like and I was very inspired by the work of Marshall Gans, which uses these three levels, articulate these three levels of connection, and a call for leadership and for service, which is what we are talking about. And then more or less I would like to go through them with you, because these days the idea is also that we use this opportunity to reflect and to see what we can do. You know, it's not about just listening, but listening to actually articulating something that we also ought to do and that we can feel empowered to do. No? So the first question is, if I am not for myself, who will be for me? No? To be for myself is to honor the sources of my worth, my strengths, my limitations, and my vulnerabilities. To find the courage, commitment, and hopefulness to face the challenges of our times, when our real sources of strength are in learning who we are, where we come from, and where we are going. To acknowledge that our days are finite, which I think is a very important point, and we have to use our time for things which are real, valuable, and viable. The second question is, when I am for myself alone, what I am. To be in relationship is about justice, not charity. Relationships requires recognition of the other as a self, is to do with the other and not to the other. Entering into relationships requires speaking and listening, exploring values, interests, and resources, discerning commonalities and differences, committing to a shared project. To find sources of renewal, we begin by revitalizing old relationships and creating new ones, through which we can question what we have not before questioned, learn what we have not yet learned, identify common purpose, turn differences into collaboration, and create shared capacity. And the final question, if not now, when? Action requires commitment of time, money, and energy. Committing resources requires making choices, and making choices shapes who we are. By taking action, we not only change the world around us, we also change ourselves. By creating action, but creative action is challenging. Changing ourselves and our world depends on creative action, the capacity that flows not from our status as knowers, experts, who have all the answers, but from our courage as learners, questioners, with the faith that we can learn to create a new world only by creating it. So action is very important. It's not postponing action and things that you learn and then you act. You learn by acting. We must commit our time, imaginations, and hearts. We must engage with each other in newly challenging ways. And we must find the courage to risk creative actions. The job of leadership is to make this happen. Thank you.
So my role is to introduce Paul Batty, and I'm delighted. I'm Andrea Bartoli. I'm the Dean of the School of Diplomacy and the representative of the community of Sant'Egidio, a member of the FAC, and somebody who has been involved with this project for some time. And I'm delighted that Thais was able to bring us back to Assisi and to Kalamazoo and to the Fetzer invitation, because I think that this is an unusual conversation. It doesn't happen every day that you speak about love and forgiveness and governance. And I think that it's important for us to locate ourselves where we are, not just in the world at the moment, but at Georgetown. And remind ourselves that not long ago, America had a very severe and tragic civil war, and that Georgetown decided to have two colors representing the university, the blue and the gray, coming from that sorrow, from that suffering. It's a little gesture, not much. A university, deciding a color, what is it? But it's a way to contribute to a country that still needs to come together. It's a way to invite ourselves into a world that is coming. It's a way for us to say there are decisions we can make that are actually making the world that is coming to us. The world is not already made. The world is not just inherited. The world is given to us so that while we welcome what we have, we can make the best of it. And tonight, to invite us further in this journey is Paul Batty, a man that had a life from his native Pakistan, came to Italy, studied, became a surgeon, and then was plunged again into a difficult political life as a minister for minority, and now a leader of an NGO and a worldwide recognized voice for this world that is coming, a world in which it is possible to be different, a world in which it is possible to be together at the same time. I met Paul Batty in person just a few minutes ago, and we started speaking Italian because he learned his medicine in Italy. But we were friends for a long time because he participated many times with the community of Sant'Egidio in many of the gatherings. He speaks of Andrea Riccardi, the founder of the community, Marco Impagliazzo, the president, as good friends. So I really feel that I'm introducing a friend as a friend. But in a way, I'm inviting you in this friendship. And through this day and a half, I would like all of us to take each other seriously, the same way Georgetown took seriously that moment when it took the gray and the blue together. You have people in the room that have something to say, something to share. We will work together by listening to each other in these sessions, but also in the hallways, also in the meals, also in the time we are together. Work with each other to welcome the world that is coming, to welcome the time that is coming, to make sure that the time that is coming becomes clearer to us. We will have Jackie Antonson doing the evaluation for us, and after each session we will have some questions, and we will ask you to give us words and indications. This is part of the FETSE tradition. But I believe that there is something about being reflective about this unusual conversation. It's not common, it's unusual. We have brave participants in this conversation. We are delighted to be together. But we are especially delighted to welcome Paul Batty tonight with us.
Thank you, Andrea. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It's my real pleasure and great honor to be here and share my experience and views on this vital argument, love and forgiveness on governance. I take this opportunity to express my sincere thanks to community of Sant'Egidio, Registry of Peace, Georgetown University, for organizing this important seminar and inviting me to share my experience in this. Today, some part of the world, including my own country, we are passing through a very delicate phase of our history. Every day, we face cruel realities of losing life. Often, religion is hijacked to spread hatred, discrimination, and violence, while religion should spread message of love, unity, forgiveness. We all know very well that the great historical figures who delivered entire nation from oppression and slavery by following this principle of love and forgiveness. It's irrefutable that when a man or woman of strong conviction and determination lives proactively in love and forgiveness, the results are marvelous and revolutionary. With this in mind, let me share some of small events experienced by me and my family. As Andrea introduced first, I am surgeon, specialist in general and pediatric surgery with additional master in plastic surgery. I devoted most of my life doing missionary doctor in my own country, helping poor, especially treating the cancer patient and malformation of the children. In addition to my medical practice, I was used to support my younger brother, Shabazz Bhatti, and now carry on his mission following his assassination when he was leaving from home in 2012. Shabazz was my younger brother. He dedicated 28 years of his life to bring human equality, raise his voice against all kinds of injustices, to promote interfaith harmony in our society. In his struggle, he practiced this principle, love and forgiveness. He forged a path of love. He was a proactive man, an agent of change led by Holy Spirit. He fearlessly and actively knit a network of friendship with individual soul, reaching from the poorest poor to the highest echelons of our country's government. He particularly worked together with the people of diverse faith, and especially in our country with the Muslim community. And he was having support from the Islamic scholars, and his collaboration, love, and relation with other faiths bring very considerable and important changes in the society of Pakistan. And especially some of the changes he was able to do with the collaboration of his love with the Muslim community. Pakistan is a predominantly Muslim country with 95% people are Muslim. And it was impossible to imagine where people want to impose their radical philosophy. He was able to establish, create prayer rooms for the Christians in different institutions, and especially in the prisons of Pakistan. He's spearheaded establishing quota for the participation of religious minorities in the government in order to bring them in the mainstream of the society. He established several committees for interreligious dialogue and led Pakistani government, especially parliament, approving 4 seats for the religious minorities in the upper house of the parliament. It's worth to mention that not many years ago, representation of the religious minorities in our government was impossible. He promoted better relationship between Muslim, Christian, and other religious traditions by leaving out the Sermon on the Mount, the way of Jesus' teaching in the gospel. He stayed true to his faith until his last breath. Immediately after his death, I was astonished to witness a tidal wave of deep grief and love from not only Muslim and Hindu religious leaders, but Pakistani politicians, diplomats, international human rights activists. And the government of Pakistan expressly recognized his efforts, awarding him one of the most highest national award of courage and honor, Halal-e-Shujaat. I eventually entered the political process to serve my nation under unexpected and extraordinary circumstances. I served as a missionary doctor for 10 years in my country, never dreaming that I would become a federal minister working on behalf of religious minorities and underclass in Pakistan. But it had been my brother's wish from the beginning. He was my younger brother who never took no for an answer. Let me tell you the story how I got in this political scene. When I was working as a surgeon in Pakistan as a missionary doctor, I was forced to flee the country with my family after a violent attack on my residence by some unknown people. One morning, I was woke and saw that I was surrounded by so many people with weapons in my residence who were trying to cut the security bars, and this was unsettling, to say the least. But for my brother Shabazz, it was one of the most disappointing moments of his life. He tried to convince me not to leave, but the security risk to my family and me made it impossible to practice the profession I so dearly love. I followed my instinct and moved to Italy, where I had received my medical and postgraduate training and enjoyed thoroughly the culture, so therefore the transition was not difficult. In a short period of time, God blessed me and I was able to establish a very good medical practice, building a new life for my family with a great deal of satisfaction. During this period, my brother and I clashed on opposite poles. He was trying to convince me to return to Pakistan because of the pressing need of the community, while I was arguing with him that he should move to Europe because his life was in danger. Shabazz was not strange to authentic death threat by men who despised his existence, his religion, and his work on behalf of the hopeless. So as a brother normally do, we argued. Looking back, I realized I was arguing from rational and human perspective with a man whose gaze was fixed on heaven. I was begging him to leave Pakistan. He only responded that he had surrendered his life in God's hand and would follow his mission until his last breath. My last conversation with him of this nature happened only 1 month before his assassination. Shabazz asked me to return back to Pakistan. I told him, "You are calling me to leave paradise for hell." He immediately replied, "The road leads to paradise starts in Pakistan." This was a dark and terrible day for me. My pleas with him to leave fell on deaf ears. And I was absolutely convinced I was doing the right thing. But on March 2nd, 2011, our world turned upside down. The news of Shabazz's murder shocked me to the core. I was crestfallen, furious, and disheartened. Of course, I immediately flew to Pakistan to attend my brother's funeral. It was my intention to take members of my family and move them safely in Italy or Canada, wherever my brother is living, and say farewell to Pakistan forever. My conviction at that moment was that Pakistan was unworthy for the services of my family. But when I landed in Pakistan, I found a heart-rending situation. There was a sea of people in attendance and at his funeral, women, men, and children from all walks of life, politicians, diplomats, Christian, Muslim, Hindu, religious leaders, all desperately crying for him. And they were saying, "Who will take his call for love?" When I accompanied his body by helicopter to our native village of Kushpur, a crowd of young and old people overwhelmed me, crying and sobbing. they had lost their champion of freedom. It was impossible to console them. They were brokenhearted, struck with grief in the loss of Shabazz. He was like a father to them, and they were now orphaned. I was astounded by the lasting power of his sacrificial love, now living in the hearts of the people. I know that in reality it was love of God. And in the midst of this vast demonstration, many Muslim leaders were chanting, "Shabazz, your mission will continue." And that was very heart-touching for me to see Muslims who were loving this person who was having his faith on purely Christian. And many of these people turned and looked to me saying, "Now what?" This was an extraordinary and defining moment for me. Shortly thereafter, the government of Pakistan officially offered me to take his federal minister seat in the government. Then the executive committee of his political party, All Pakistan Minority Alliance, asked me to take charge and elected me as chairman. I remained incensed with my government for its inability to protect my brother and stop the people behind his murder. But in these chaotic and intense moments, something began to change in my heart. I began recalling about Shabazz from the early childhood until his death. I kept seeing his smiling face filled with love, forgiveness, and acceptance in front of me. It was transformative. There was a palpable sense of love of God strengthening him through the difficult phases of his struggle, especially the battle with an ideology wanting to impose hatred, division, discrimination, and violence in our country. The same love of God began to strengthen me. My resentment against my government began to ebb, and slowly, perhaps with fits and starts, I began to see his murder through eyes of forgiveness. I then decided to continue his mission, realizing that though it appears contradictory, but forgiveness and love were possibly the ultimate weapon of revenge. While reflecting on this matter, I also started to think about my mother. She had lived with Shabazz for 10 years of his life and was deeply affected with his death. His life with him primarily consisted of praying together at home and praying for him when he was away while she waited for his safe return. Even in her advanced age, she would not let her sleep until he returned home late night from his duties. Tragically, she was an ear witness of his murder. The assassins targeted him as he was leaving her following morning prayer. He died only a few meters in front of their home. My mother heard the thunder of bullets killing my brother. Even today, it's impossible for me to imagine her anguish and pain. I worried that if I proposed my decision to continue his mission to my mother, she would reject it categorically. And worse, that it would increase her suffering. But as my courage increased and I gathered the nerve to speak with her, this is the tradition of our family. Parents' blessing and approval is held in high regard. Initially, when I approached my mother, I was hesitant and timid. But to my amazement, my mother told me without hesitating that this is the mission, that mission of my brother should continue, and I was the right person for this job. She then told me that it was Shabazz's will that I return to Pakistan, and now it's God's will and her wish as well. So it was. There was no one left for me to argue with. Then she said something remarkable. She told me that she was not angry at all with the Shabazz killer because they don't know what they have done. And she was free from a desire for revenge and retaliation against them. She explained that she had forgiven the killers of my brother. Later, she reminded me that Shabazz's way of life was rooted in forgiveness and love, following the way of our Lord. I was deeply moved and encouraged. More than that, I was being transferred by the love of God. I was honored and filled with joy in assuming the legacy of my brother. I desire to continue work full of hope and determination, and by the grace of God, to love my brothers and sisters as myself, and love and forgive my enemies. My objective now is to facilitate peaceful coexistence among people of diverse faith in my country, where every human being must be able to live with dignity and respect. I have had substantial love and support from both Christian and Muslim brothers and sisters in Pakistan in our struggle against a specific ideology in Pakistan that victimizes our entire nation. One significant example I would like to share with you. There was a small girl of 14 years old, Christian girl. She was mentally underdeveloped. Some malicious people wrongfully accused her of blasphemy. In my country, blasphemy is a capital crime. I learned that malicious people wanted to use this false charge against Rimsha as a basis to incite a violent attack against the Christian community. Their plan was to publicly announce this act of so-called blasphemy during Friday prayers in more than 100 major mosques in Islamabad and Rawalpindi, in order to incite anti-Christian feeling and act of violence. When I learned of their plan, I immediately contacted our heads of national law enforcement. They assured me of full cooperation, but we all were concerned about the enormous number of worshippers attending prayers at the mosques and the high risk that militant agitators could inflame the crowd to violent attack against the Christians throughout Islamabad and Pakistan. I have had excellent relation with the Muslim community. I have had very good friends. I studied Holy Quran. I remembered very good examples of forgiveness and love of Holy Prophet. Keeping in mind that, I understood that I love my Muslim brothers and sisters because we are all the children of God. We are all the same part of national body. With this in mind, I tried to contact the different imams of the mosques. A number of my colleagues warned me not to do unilaterally this act, fearing it would exaggerate the situation, target me directly as a person. But I am sure that God guided me with this power of love and truth in making the decision to call these imams for help. Surprisingly, when I was talking with them, sharing the values of Islam, examples of Holy Prophet, of tolerance and love, they changed. Their collaboration and sport helped me quickly diffuse a difficult, high danger and tense situation that could have resulted in loss of lives and widespread disaster in Pakistan. There was not a single attack against Christian communities. And this small girl, Rimsha case, went to a trial and was eventually heard at the High and Supreme Court. I am pleased and feel honored to report that not only this girl was exonerated and released from incarceration, but her accuser was the first time in the history held accountable and brought to justice by the Muslim people for filling the false blasphemy charges. This girl's case set a spiritual, moral, and legal precedent for change, a precedent, I believe, birthed in the redemptive fires of love and forgiveness following the assassination of my brother and his love for the Muslim community. We continue to make progress with the help of God. During my political career, I had worked alongside with many religious leaders from a variety of backgrounds and convictions. I have the opportunity to speak in depth with them about the real issues of the religious discrimination and hatred against Christian community and other religious minorities in Pakistan. Some have been prominent representatives of different sects of Muslim community, including members of the Islamic Ideology Council. This council is legally supported by our constitution and serve as the supreme advising agency to the government of Pakistan. We hosted an event entitled Living Together with the Diversity, attended by 500 imams, including members of the Islamic Ideology Council and its chairman. That event culminated with the issuance of unanimous joint declaration and pledge to work together to stem the evil tide of hatred and discrimination expressed on name of religion. I believe one thing made this possible, a willingness by leaders across the religious board to follow the way of love and forgiveness. It is a small step, but it has hope of a radical change in our community. There are few stories express both my experience and conviction that love and forgiveness are powerful and active change agent. When released in good measure in the dark and dangerous regions of this world, love and forgiveness will move mountains and tear down power, principalities, and strongholds. Love and forgiveness can bind the individual broken heart, shine the light on oppression and justice, and free people from despotic oppression. Let me conclude with the word of Jesus Christ from the Sermon on the Mount. Enter through the narrow gate, for the gate is wide and the way is broad that leads to destruction, and there are many who enter it. For the gate is small and the way is narrow that leads to life, and there are few who find it. Each of us on a road, a religious path to spiritual destination, a place of consequences and accountability for our choices and action. Let us choose the narrow way. Even a few following him, for following this path of redemptive love and forgiveness will spark an exceptional return in relief of the suffering of poor, freedom for the trafficked and enslaved, healing for the sick and wounded, deliverance for oppressed to live with equality and dignity. I believe that God has given us clear eyes and deep and fearless heart to courageously love and forgive within the political process. Here is the holy key to rid our communities of hatred and discrimination. Thank you very much.
We are delighted and we welcome these words and we welcome this invitation to friendship and thoughtful engagement. Your story is clearly a story made by you, made by your brother, made by your mother. Very, very clearly, you stressed this role of your mother very powerfully. And that resonated with me very, very much. But I think that it's time for us to invite everybody to work a little bit. So before we ask questions to Paul Batty and before we make comments, I would like you to speak with the person close to you and share your insight that immediately comes out of this listening of Paul. What you find remarkable, what you find useful, what you find helpful in constructing the world that is coming. Not all of us will have a chance to ask questions or make comments. And so to take this humble moment to just do it in yourself and do it with the person close to you for a couple of minutes. Then we'll reconvene all together. Thank you. Very good. I think that we can reconvene and share together what the heart is telling you, what the mind is telling you, knowing that we all know very well the old maxim, divide and impera. The Romans were very good. But I think that we are learning how unite and govern is actually the response. That if you do not unite, it's very difficult to govern. It's probably impossible to govern. That in order to govern, you need to unite, and sometimes to unite, you need to do generous, courageous act, as going, towards speaking somebody that you would not necessarily speak after threats and assassination. So let's have comments, questions, insights, any form of, please, speak loud and be aware that we are not able to see you. We have a lot of lights, but we cannot see you. So you can see us, but we cannot see you.
Thank you so much for your courage. What came to me was the memory of a movie, Witness. And there's been a murder in that movie, and these very powerful forces are going to kill this child that witnessed something. And in the film, someone rings the bell which brings the whole Amish community together, then the murder can't happen. And I think of you as ringing this bell at the risk of yourself, bringing these people together as their better selves. It's a witness. I think of the word Christian witness, but I think of the word spiritual witness even more. You bring the witness, but it's at risk to yourself that's the act.
If you want to comment, feel to comment as you feel, but also let it go as you feel that's the appropriate answer.
Yeah. I don't think so that I have planned to do that. I think it was something came from the Holy Father, Holy God. So if I was sharing with Andrea before that if few years back somebody was asking me to do that, I was thinking that's mad, somebody is asking to do this. And it was impossible for me to talk with the imams and having such kind of relationship thinking. But I was guided. And I think my mother often say, it is your brother who is guiding you. So he wanted that, and that's why I had the result. And if you see, even now, there are several cases in Pakistan prior to that, and where we were not involved of blasphemy, like Hassia Bibi and others. So they're complicated. But in this case, I really adopted a way of forgiveness, love, and sharing our love with the Muslim people. So which has given me a great courage and showed that there is a space among people of diverse faith. But a lot of people, when we talk here and we see that there are suicidal bombers or community in Pakistan, Christians are ill-treated. In the same community, there are the people like Suleiman Taseer, who was a governor of Punjab and who took stand to protect a Christian woman, and he was killed for that. There are very courageous Muslim lawyers who are protecting Christians. So there are examples, and there is space of dialogue, but there is a specific group who want to impose their radical philosophy to disseminate hatred, violence, and discrimination, and we should be united that. I am quite confident and sure if all together we unite for the cause to, promote common values of religion, common human values, we can win, we can overcome evil with good.
Hi, Tom Banshoff. Thank you for your wonderful presentation. I was very struck at the end in your quoting Jesus' words about entering through the narrow gate. Wide is the gate that leads to destruction. And it was striking, as it must have been to Jesus' listeners, in this context to hear those words. Are you suggesting that love and forgiveness are not simply psychological, emotional categories, that they link back to divine command in a very deep way? And has that been part of what's been motivating you, this sense of responsibility, calling it obligation to live a life of love and forgiveness in practice?
Yeah. I think if you follow the history of my brother, he was the true follower of our Lord Jesus Christ. And he, in certain moment, expressed that he don't feel fear in this community in front of this radical philosophy and in front of these threats that he was receiving every day because he loved Jesus. He followed the path of Jesus. And when you love and follow that, you are relieved from every kind of fear that you have. So I think in this kind of situation, faith, a strong faith, and love with our Jesus Christ is very important, which give you courage, strength to overcome such kind of situation. I don't have that strong faith, I should express that had my brother, but my belief is that when I pray, when I really leave my life and job in Jesus' hands, I feel really good. I'm encouraged, and many times I overcome, like this girl was a challenge for me, so problems are resolved.
I don't know your schedule, but I would suggest you deliver an open lecture on the Capitol Hill. Everybody with their ideology or partisan power struggle something and make the government dysfunction and not serve the people of the United States and not serve the interest of the global stability or whatever that we expect them to be working for. So invite the President and Congress leadership to be there. So they should develop actually post-conventional leadership mindset.
Okay, if I'm very organized, I'm pleased to come and talk.
It's definitely good to think about post-conventional leadership in Washington.
Thank you. My name is Tom Getman. I was serving in Geneva with the faith-based agency and with UN OCHA during the terrible earthquake, 2007, 2008. And with a little bit of faith and a lot of trepidation, I went with great hesitancy to the Pakistan embassy. And we had lost, my agency had lost 6 staff in Pakistan. And I found what you found if we take the risk. Incredible people from your mission in Geneva who wanted to work in partnership to help the people in the high mountains that were so devastated by the earthquake. And I want to thank you as a minister in the government for having those kind of people in your missions around the world. And I think off of Mike and the assassination of your brother and the death many people in my agency and many people on the ground in your country, that pretty amazing things happen when we come together. Maybe sometimes it takes terrible tragedy to make it happen, but I want to encourage us all, even if our faith is little, fading, to embrace these opportunities to see the miracles that can happen when Jesus enters into these relationships. Thank you, thank you, thank you. It was transforming.
Yeah, thank you.
Would you be able to say something about the faith of your mother a little bit more than what you have said? To me, it was very interesting how very private, presumably piety and deep faith of a woman has been transformed into this extraordinary public, had extraordinary public effect. And so I'd love to hear a little bit more about her.
About your mother, your mother faith and
Yeah.
his
Actually, we are a Christian family by generations. And as per tradition, in our village, it's small. Pakistan is big country with 200 millions of population. Out of that, only 5% belong to the religious minorities, and out of this 5%, 2% are Christian. But there are small communities where there is only pure Christian communities. And we, in this village, grew up as a pure Christian. We were having pastor, we were having nuns, we were having, I don't know how it happened, but my parents were very religious. Since from the beginning, we were following all the tradition of our religion. Sometimes when I was a child, it was very difficult for me to accept all the restrictions, like recitating the rosary every evening, going to the church. So it was, problem for me when I was a child. I didn't like that. But when I was, adult, and especially in our society, when the problems were, it is poor country, and illiteracy rate is almost 50%. So there was a lot of sufferance, a lot of ignorance. In this ignorance, my brother and my mom, they were teaching us to raise our voice against any kind of injustice. So especially my father, who followed us, and he was following us with the teaching of Bible, teaching of gospel, they were transferring. And same my mom, because that was there. So we had very good connection spiritually and physically even with the community, with the pastors, with the church. And at the end, I presume my mother's role was, giving us education properly according to the teaching of gospel, because she was convinced with that. And she achieved what she was wanted to have her children, that who follow properly the way of God. And I would like to say, when I was a child, my mom was wanted that I should become a priest. So then on certain moment, it was not my ambition. So I said, no, I would not like to do that. But that, otherwise she would have loved that. So that's for her faith and her commitment. And still now, when I am at home, if it's Sunday, she has asked me if I went to Mass or not. So she belongs to him. So she lives very, patiently, our teachings, our faith. And still she is almost 87, and she prays regularly. And she's courageous. She gave courage. When you talk with her, she gave courage. And even now at this stage, when I have difficulties, I go to her and talk with this. And she talk with the reference of our Bible, our teaching, our faith, and many times I feel very happy to that.
Thank you. We have one more, and I can see another one there, and then we can.
Good evening. My name is Sherry Bo. I'm a grad student at the School of Diplomacy and International Relations, Seton Hall University. Thank you so much for sharing your story. Especially for me, I was very touched. Me being a grad student, and it's not often that I get to hear someone that experienced what you experienced, and then to say that you publicly forgave your brother's murderers. I was just curious to find out, okay, in terms of like, if you could briefly walk us through the process, especially as regards the time frame, as to you forgiving your brother's murderers. How long did it take you to sort of like shed some light into that? Like, okay, from finding out that it was murder to you saying, okay, I'm ready to move on, and let's forgive them. What's the
Yeah. Yeah, it took some time. It was not, because as I expressed in my statement, when I heard about his murder, I was really angry. I was not wanted even to stay in that country. I was blaming government, I was blaming extremists. And then when I went to the process, I lived there, and I saw how much Muslim people loved him, how many other people loved him. And philosophy behind is that in some countries, including my country, there are a lot of children who are brainwashed with a specific ideology, with the conviction to die or kill on name of religion. They are used for this ideology. And actually, they are victim of this for a radical ideology. And then I thought, these people who killed my brother, maybe they don't know what they have done. They are victim of the same ideology, same philosophy. And if I was coming with a reaction to say this ideology, this religion, or this country has killed my brother, and creating an other wave of violence and reaction that could have never been an end. So for me, something I think I was guided from the God, and something when I start living inside and seeing on other aspect that this radical philosophy has created this victim who's these children or these people who are killing or who are becoming suicidal bomber one day, they are victim of the same philosophy. So we have to save these children too.
Last question, and then we will be.
Well, my name is Innocent Ugaraku. I'm a Jesuit priest and a student at George Mason University. Thank you so much, Minister Paul and Professor Berkley. Both of you are my inspirers. I found your story very inspiring. And I have one comment, and then a question. The comment I have is, seemingly the life of your brother and the values, love and forgiveness, they are unstoppable. You can't stop them. So this is, I think, a well-chosen theme, and the values that we can't stop, no matter what. But the question I have is, how do we carry this conversation into the government? So moving to the governance, looking at your own government, both the political government and then the religious government, how do we carry this conversation into the government, the governing body within the country?
Yeah, as it concerns about the forgiveness, it doesn't mean that somebody kill you or dangerous and you should just forgive and it is finished. So we have forgiveness from our hearts, these people, because we don't want revenge. But the truth and the accountability on certain extent should be, followed. At least these people should not be damaging others. But our idea and conviction to forgive is with pure heart. We want to help these people. We want to don't disturb. We don't know. As I explained, that these children or these killers, they don't know what they have done. So we have to, in some way, identify the root cause of problem and try to resolve that problem. Of course, we can't make a law that everybody who killed, that he should be released and will be not punished. That is, accountability will be followed by the government. But on the other hand, if we are not forgiving, if this reaction was creating a kind of counter-reaction in other community, it was going to another end. So we were not, and the results that I have after his assassination, communicating with pupils, a lot of people transformed, a lot of people are in the process to transform. That's the great success of that. The rest, of course, we talk about even about the death penalty and other things. This is the process that will take time, and we can't, stop that doing government their job.
Before we close, we would like to continue the conversation through this little form that you have. If you don't have, we have people that can give to you, and if you don't have a pen, we have also the pen. The reason for this is because we believe that it's important for every voice to be heard. And there is a way that is public and clear, but it's also a way that is more private and confidential. So we want to know if you enjoy the panel, and if you enjoyed it very much, give a 7. If you didn't enjoy it at all, give it a 1, just the beginning. But also, tell us about learning. Tell us if you learned something new, something important. If you learned a lot of things, give us a 7. A 7 is an interesting number, it's not 10, it's a prime number. We can speak about 7 and the importance of 7 and why. I'm clearly trying to prime the audience and get more 7s, but this is. But at the end, also give us a word or a comment or something that you feel is important for us to keep thinking. You don't need to sign this. It's just a way for us to collect everybody. But we feel that as we heard Paul Batty's voice, your voice is important, and that what is important to us is to continue this unusual conversation. As soon as you're done, you can give these forms to Anna and Thomas that are close to and then we will enjoy. Thank you for the Berkley Center. We have a wonderful reception, and we can continue the conversation. So thank you again.
Okay,
this is a lovely thing.